MagicInspiration.com.
When I did my top 100 favorite movies earlier this year, two different Will Ferrell performances made it onto that list. Anchorman, which I think is the funniest movie to have been made this century. One of the funniest movies of all time. But also a movie that wasn't necessarily a comedy. Today we're going to be talking about Stranger Than Fiction. I have here volume 3 of my Will Ferrell DVD collection. This containing the, I guess you'd call it the dramatic performances, though all of them are still kind of comedic. Stranger Than Fiction, Everything Must Go, where he plays an alcoholic, and Downhill with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Stranger Than Fiction is far and away the best of the three. In it, Will Ferrell plays this guy who basically lives his life as safely as possible. He lives it by his watch. Everything is on a timer. He knows exactly where he's supposed to be at every second of the day. He leads a very boring life as a tax man. And one day, his watch stops, and he has to reset it. And thus kicks off this completely new beginning for him as a human being, happening at the same time that he begins to hear a voice in his head, the voice that is narrating everything that he does. And this voice it's not talking to him. He's just hearing it, like talking about what he's doing. If he's brushing his teeth, it's talking about him brushing his teeth. If he's waiting at the bus stop, it's talking about him waiting at the bus stop. And one day, this voice tells him he's going to die. That resetting his watch is going to lead inevitably to his death. So begins this sort of journey that Will Ferrell goes on, where instead of being timid about everything, he's now looking at everything like, I'm going to die. One, I've got to figure out a way out of this. And two, I've got to start living my life. He goes to Dustin Hoffman, who is a professor at a college, and the reason he goes there is because in his head, it sounds like there's a book being written about what he's doing. So Dustin Hoffman is a professor of literature, and he convinces him that this is really happening. And, okay, I'm a character in a book. What do I do? How do I get out of this? What should happen in a book? And yes, there is a book being written. Emma Thompson is a writer who always kills off her main characters. That's sort of her thing. And she's having a very hard time writing this new book. And it's great because at some point, when Emma Thompson realizes what's happening, she starts to think, oh my God, how many people have I killed in real life? Is this like an isolated incident? Or do I have some sort of power where when I write a story, people die? It's a funny setup. A book's being written about a real person. That real person can hear the book being written. That's a funny setup. But Stranger Than Fiction does something so profound with it that, in my opinion, it belongs on a level with The Truman Show, with Groundhog Day, with these other movies where comedians come in. They're still being funny. Jim Carrey is hilarious in The Truman Show. Bill Murray is outstanding in Groundhog Day. You laugh your ass off during that movie. But the movie is saying something more. There's something profound about what it's saying. About, in the case of The Truman Show, reality, how we perceive reality. In the case of Groundhog Day, Bill Murray living this same day over and over again until he gets it right. This movie, it's on that level. I'd call it better than Groundhog Day. This is Will Ferrell at his finest, acting-wise. Anchorman is still maybe the funnier movie, but Stranger Than Fiction is more satisfying as a story. Obviously, I mean, Anchorman is more, it's a series of gags held together by a very thin story. But Stranger Than Fiction is beautiful. The message that it has. You know, eventually, Will Ferrell's character, he's had this crush on Maggie Gyllenhaal, who's this sort of punk hippie girl who works at a bakery that he has to go and audit. And she hates his guts because he's a tax man, you know. Everybody hates his guts. But he falls in love with this sort of free spirit, something that he is not. It's a great contrasting love story. You know, Will Ferrell aspires to be what Maggie Gyllenhaal is, that sort of free spirit. That's not who he is. But he wants to learn to play the guitar. He wants to be fearless. He wants to be that person. And it's a great message about how we can be better. We can do better in our lives. We don't have to be stuck in a rut. We don't have to be unhappy. It is that message of, if today was the last day that you were going to be alive, what would you do with it? And it's taken to a really profound level. And I really can't say enough good things about this movie. If you've never seen Stranger Than Fiction, and a lot of people didn't, this is not one of Will Ferrell's better known performances. Seek this movie out. It is so good. It is wonderful. 5 stars for Stranger Than Fiction. Will Ferrell is now in a rut comedically. I don't think he's done a movie since, certainly not a theatrical movie, I think since that Sherlock Holmes movie that nobody liked. And then he was in some movie that came out on Netflix, which nobody liked. He's in that phase of his career. I like to think of it as the Mike Myers phase of your career. Mike Myers knocking it out of the park with, you know, Wayne's World and Austin Powers and Shrek. And then you get tired of that same kind of shtick that he does. You know what I mean? But Mike Myers, Jim Carrey, Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, these guys can act. These guys, they can see the funny side of tragedy. That is unique. That is something that only comedians who do these performances can do. If he made Anchorman 3 now, I don't think anybody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see him do Talladega Nights now. That shtick that he had, it was funny in its time. It just doesn't work anymore. So I really hope he does more movies like Stranger Than Fiction. Again, 5 out of 5 stars. This is a great movie. This is one of the best movies of this century. Find Stranger Than Fiction, seek it out, and heed its wisdom.
The worlds.
Sort of gave myself the challenge of, okay,